So, you have been around for a while. Tell us who you are and why you started playing Eve.
Yeah, so I have two stints at Eve. My first stint, I was like younger than Youngpuke. I was probably in like my early teenage years, and I just couldn't get into it. The game was super complex, and I was playing Modern Warfare and stuff. And then I came back, and then I got involved right away. I sort of found my community, which I think is like really important in Eve, which is faction warfare. So I immediately got involved with groups in faction warfare from 2016. Um, and that era was just amazing. There was tons of players, there was tons of fighting, and I like was built in like an arena of this constant bloodshed. It was awesome, like thousands of kills a week. Um, but it was mentorship. There was a lot of people there, and so as my journey continued, like I went to pirate groups, I went to null blocks, I've been around town, and then we eventually uprising happened about almost over 2 years ago now, I think, and we were at a crossroads of Eve, and in that crossroads, um, Eve was a very big decline, and uprising hit, and faction warfare bloomed, and then we decided to rebuild our alliance called Sedition again, and we had a lot of fun, a lot of fun so far, and it's been a fantastic 2 years, and being able to work with people like yourself and uh, other individuals across the Eve galaxy and trying to make the game a better place because the game is fun. Like we enjoy the game, and I just want to keep having fun and playing it. So
Very
that's
cool.
the short version of like I went to this corp or that corp. Who cares? But I think like in general, like that's like my ethos is like I think the game is fun and I think it's a great game and we should really promote a lot of people and content streams and efforts that people put into the game that it's oftenly not recognized.
Yeah,
So
totally agree on that. So, you're running for CSM19 this year. You probably have a few points that you would like to tell the audience.
yes, so I think the big one is for me is like a story is over the past 2 years we've been seeing consistent with Uprising and Havoc, and the other smaller patches between. We've been seeing consistent faction warfare iteration, and I think that there's more work that needs to be done in low sec in general to improve low sec, whether it's focusing on more oro anomalies, getting more stuff to make the ecosystem more vibrant, because Havoc never got really any iteration afterwards, and there's a lot of work that needs to be done. One of the biggest issues that I think that's still in faction warfare is AWOXing, which if you don't know what
Yeah.
AWOXing is, because you have a lot of new people, that's when you attack your own teammate, and that's like a big no-no. Right now, you get a standings loss, and it's a big issue in the Southern War Zone, especially because you have these groups hurting new players and they don't know how to fight back. And then they get blobbed, and then it's like there's no punishment for that type of behavior really, and then they can't gain LP and stuff like that. And so that's the big one is eliminating AWOXing or making more harsher penalties for it, which would be you don't gain loyalty points for over a week.
Hmm.
Is the first one. The second one is definitely Citadel changes in LowSec. I think with Metanox and Equinox is hotly contested, and I always say that Equinox is basically a LowSec update, but it's meant for nullsec because Metanoxes have created so many fights. At the same time, there needs to be some Citadel tweaks. There was a few couple years ago, but with these changes, making quality of life changes with Equinox, I think is necessary. The other things too is fixing issues with Havoc and basic enlistment stuff, specifically improving like how Havoc's LP stores or the Pirate Insurgency's LP stores are very different how they're operated than the Empire LP stores. Like for example, um, when you trade in items in the pirate faction warfare LP stores, you don't require tags, and tags are like a very uphill cost, and it impacts you can't get them right now anymore. It's not in the gameplay loop, and so a change that we're trying to advocate for is to change tags out into the LP stores in um, the Navy faction warfare, so it makes it more like equal between all the factions. So some people may not all go Angels then or all go Guristas because it's easier to make money in. it improves the quality of life across the game. Um, yeah, I think those would be the big three. And then another thing would be like, tackle and plexes as well,
Right.
which is pretty relatively straightforward because there's like making it new players too and all players like there's a general risk and introduce them like I'm going into a site, there is risk, and so you don't have like unfitted ships fighting and doing just farming or botting and cheating uh, by gaining loyalty points as well.
So
Roundabout answer.
so I'm really glad to hear you talk about the AWOC scene because this year it seems that Eve Rookies is a lot of our players are starting to get into faction warfare. We talked the other night that I'm kind of starting to dip my toes into it as well. And that was one of the biggest complaints that we've gotten. And a matter of fact, we've gone out a few times as fleets and we'd have so many ships and they would just come back with a bigger fleet. I mean, it's really kind of like the N+1 problem. There is no beating it.
Yes, and it's I think the sites like the labeling of the sites try to minimize it, but people still like will blob people.
Yeah.
And I don't think N+1's always going to be a solution, but I think then the way that we frame our roams in faction warfare is like you open it to all doors and you start building that snowball effect while you're roaming and being more accepting of other like random players that are joining, right? And then you get your big fleet, and then as accumulation at the end of the fleet, then you meet new people and you build more connections. And but it can be really hard if you're like by yourself and you don't know what you're supposed to be doing,
Mm-hmm.
who to talk to, what Discord servers to go to, what corps you should talk to or try to fly with. It can be very difficult to sort of integrate yourself into that community.
So then, what do you think is one of the biggest challenges for new players coming into Eve?
I think the biggest challenge, there's two. So I'll tie them together. I think one is the barrier of entry in EVE Online in 2024 is too high. I think skill plans like the Magic 16, um, which I don't know if that's controversial, but I think the Magic 16 is a barrier, especially if you're trying to catch up. And let's say you can't afford to buy skill injectors to catch up with other players. Like there's a monetary cost assumed with that. And if the game already costs $20 a month, you want to try, do you really want to spend $100 to get some
Yep.
basic skills and wait 3 months? I think that's a huge barrier of entry. Um, the other thing too is it's great that CCP has a website, but I think as us as a community, like I've always tried to, when if there's a new player and he's trying to find a group, refer them personally, make that connection, give them that interpersonal relationship, saying, "Hey, you're looking for somewhere to go. Let's find you a home." I think we got to do a better job of that. Like I know you guys will do that. You all do that a ton. Um, and there's the website and Eve, like top new player groups, but how well do those new player groups really integrate players,
Yep.
keep them on board, keep them interested? I think there needs to be more resources there.
Yeah, I
Because like
totally.
for oh sorry, I interrupted you.
I was gonna say I totally agree, and also, even though we do a really great job of it, we are only one community in this like vast sea.
Hmm.
So
Yeah, like how do you know where someone's going to fit if they haven't experienced the entire game?
yeah, exactly.
Um, like some people like Spectre Fleet content, some people like maybe like Pandos content, some people may like Fact War, some people like maybe Block Warfare, and so you sort of have to go shopping in a
Yep.
way for a corp, and then like a lot of people in my corp they stay for a year plus or long time, but that's when they found their home and it's a fit, they're happy,
Yep.
but sometimes there's not a good fit, like they, and so that's fine. There's no hard feelings. It's we want you to continue to play.
Yep. Totally agree on that one. And then, what do you suggest that CCP should do, or what suggestions would you give to improve new player retention?
Oh my God. I that's like such a broad question. To improve new player retention. Right now it's at 2%, I think, right? Something like that.
Yeah, it's not very high. The churn is pretty depressing to see.
It's yeah, it's like one after 1 month, I think it's like 95% of all
Yeah.
players quit. I think it's tough. It depend I'm gonna backtrack a little bit. I want to know like why like they're not staying, right? Like is it something either with marketing of the game? Like is it something with the communities that they introduce themselves with? Did they never had an interpersonal like if you're going through the MPE, right? And you have the I forgot, Aurora, I think is her name,
Yep.
right? Like the bot,
All
right?
right. Yep.
That yeah, the Aura bot, and then like that's the social interaction. Like you don't know, like if you're brand new, like you have, I think there's like members that message you, but I think it's making Eve. I know it sounds cliche, as marketed as a harsh game, a very difficult game. That the onboarding part, like if we could de difficulty wise, the entry, I think we'll have more people. Like if they get to their first fleet fight quicker, if they get to their first, interaction with players, other people better. Like they're getting more integrated. A big talk of like more higher level stuff is like, what's the integration between faction warfare and high sec? Like how do we transition people from high sec to low sec? Right. And so they learn more about the game and experience it. Um, it's I think it's like that very front end, uh, getting that very crucial relationship started faster would help a lot. But the issue is on the flip side, just talking out loud, is that there's not that many community groups that really focus on it. If you think
Yep.
about it, like there's just not, and it's very hard work and it's tiring because you're being told we got to get more people in here, but 98% of people that you try to get into the game are not going to stay.
Yep.
So it's like, what fish do you focus on? Like, how do you know? Um, and I think that's very, very sad. I don't think there is a perfect solution because then we would be there. I just think it's like a multifaceted issue that
Yep.
multiple things have to change in order for us to increase that number from 98% or decrease that number from 98% to 95.
Now, I'm glad that you actually came on here because you are specifically like one of the people that is kind of like the connection on this whole problem. CCP really, really wants to offboard people from the MPE, the career missions, and
Hmm.
the air career thingy
Yeah.
into faction warfare, but they haven't found that bridge yet. Do you think if we are able to find that bridge, that we could retain more players?
I do, but here's the money-making question. Do the devs and CCP are going to allocate the time to develop a system that would allow for that to happen? Right? Like, is there going to be enough time? Because this is like not like you can do in like one patch,
Yeah.
right? Or an intermittent patch. This is something that like it needs to take 4 to 5 months of game design, I think. That in order for it to really foster a new sort of pathway, like you need to have the corps that accept new players, which we do. We have corps like Ribbit, you have corps like UCSC, like there's tons of groups that accept new players. Um, at the same time, right, you need to then say what's that allure? You get missions to go into faction warfare, which they do, right? They have tell you to run a plex, tell you to do things, right? That's helpful. But the question is like, how do you like communicate them to reach out to a court person? When do you accept, enlist yourself, start talking to people? I think those sort of strands are not fully there in order to like really make that transition happen. But I think it has to be like a big patch and you
Yep.
integrate fact war into HiSec. Like you get mining resources for your militia that helps your system or whatever, right? And you go into Orville and you support your militia that way. And creating more opportunities to integrate themselves into FAC that's not um, like going right away to PvP, but stepping their foot into it, I think is very helpful. Because
So,
like I didn't know, like 2016, I got told what to do.
yeah.
So
So, would if you got into the CSM, would you be satisfied if you started the conversation and didn't actually see anything come to fruition this election cycle or this term?
yeah, and part of the I don't want to be a Debbie Downer, but I'm trying to be realistic, right? Like CSM's goal right now, or CCP's goal right now is nullsec, and MPE. Like, if I can start the ball rolling in a discussion, I think that's perfect. But we have to then wait and see, what comes to fruition because
Yep.
they're the way that they iterate, right? It's slow. It's just slow, and I can't argue against it. Um, we do get wins, but like it feels like it can be faster. Um, I think that if I can start the conversation, really make sure that we're able to get the ball rolling, then I really, really think that it could be really, really great. But I'm just trying to be realistic. Like we're not gonna be able to rechange everything in a year. That's just not their focus. And you just have to accept that.
So now is kind of the loaded question for some players. When's the last time you actually ran through the NPE?
So this is sort of strange. I personally haven't, but I've helped new players go through it. So like they have questions or like, do I have to go through the NPE, stuff like that. So like I advocate people to go through it, like do all the missions and air stuff, create your sort of, I know they're trying to make classes in Eve, but like it's not really classes, right? Like in other RPG
Yeah,
games. But it's like trying to pick a class, right? So I haven't personally ran it probably in years. Um, but like I try to help players navigate through it themselves. Because it's like, what am I supposed to do first? Like I have all these choices, all these missions. Like, what do I do? And I'm like, well, what I asked them like, what other games do you like to play? Like, what other roles do you like to do? Like when you play RPG games, do you like to play a healer? Like, do you like the story? Do you like the role play of the universe? Like what are you interested in? And I think that's a roundabout answer, but no, personally I haven't. But I tried to help players because it's pretty daunting. Like
it
there's just
is.
so many choices. It's not like when you select your character, your class, and you're like, click right mouse button 2 to learn how to attack. You're like thrown in a ship and you're in the middle of nowhere and you have all these icons and everything that's popping up and you feel like you need Adderall just to understand everything. So I don't
Uh,
know. Hopefully that's a satisfactory answer, but
Well, there's no
you
right and
know,
wrong. So
I guess so.
it's just interesting to see when the last time people have actually ran through it. So now, from listening to you, community is pretty important in faction warfare. What is your definition of community in Eve?
In Eve, okay, that's a great question. I think the community has two parts. I think alliances specifically, they can fall into the trap of cult of personalities. And what does that mean? That's like when you follow one person and if that person goes away, then the alliance sort of dissipates. I think that's a terrible model. Like I know that if I go off for 2 weeks, my alliance is still going to be ran. Like I don't have to burn out over it, right? People they enjoy it, and it's about fostering a mission or like a place of being where people that have either similar values or goals or combat, or for us it's combat interests, that want to play together. And it's fun. Like sometimes, we go and we gate camp. Other times that we do other things. But it's about fostering like a home for various players that from all walks of life are in real life that can sit, relax, and have fun. That's why our community, we market it to working professionals as I wear Vipers and a gold chain, but whatever. Like that's the people that we look market. It's like, I want people that they're family people. They have family, they have outside priorities. It doesn't matter if you can't log in for a month. I don't care. Like, I want you to have fun. It's a place where you can be, and that's the community that we market. At the same time, um, if it's somewhere if that's not what you want, then that's fine. Go somewhere else. What's the big deal? It's not the end of the world. And I think that's part of the community is like fostering then that home that's where you market yourself as. And you have some rules, right? Like, set it's like very apolitical, which some alliances tend to be very political, like real life wise. Um, and I feel like it's like our topics that we like to talk about is just family stuff, like my kids or people posting that they had a child, people that they're posting that they're going on vacation with their families and posting family. It's like it's different. It's like it's more of a home away from home than like a place where I'm going like super long-winded with this question, but it's like it's passion, I guess. Right? It's a place where you can call home. I guess that's like the way that I view community. And some people it's not a good fit for, and it's like that's fine, you know.
I
So
like that. Now, you and I had a little bit of conversation about this next topic, toxicity. I don't know, did you get to listen to any of Frippy's interview with me?
I I have not.
Okay.
I need to go through.
So, there is toxicity within Eve, and it exists in some corners more than others. And Frippy is literally a 6 month old, new bro candidate, and he has gotten outright discrimination from other alliances and groups within Eve. And the stuff that he told me about was pretty vile. So, what is your stance on toxicity, and how big of an issue do you think it really is?
I mean, we've had people that were in AT teams putting like, you know, pretty hateful stuff like during AT and they got banned from AT, right? Like there's a history of toxicity in EVE Online, and it's something that has to be like obviously more monitored and root out, but the people that root it out is ourselves. I like anything that is people say toxic, right? What do I mean? It's not being mean and local, right?
Yep.
It's, being racist, being xenophobic, stuff like that. And it's about maintaining the culture of your own alliance. And when you get somebody that doesn't understand those rules, they're out, right? Like they're just there's a zero tolerance policy towards that, and that's how we sort of police the game. Is that we police our own communities. Big AB has their own sheets and stuff that people have to sign. Seta does a really good job policing, but I think that's part of the recruitment that we do. Like we have a particular player that we're looking for.
Right.
We're looking for mom or dad, kids about to go to college. As I'm like don't have a kid or not in college, right? But like I'm saying like it's a type of group that you're trying to sort of
Yep.
foster. So yes, there is toxicity. We need, I think, more on CCP's part to sort of help manage it. I mean, there's like even usernames still like in the game that I'm just like, why? Like this does not make sense. Like why
Yeah.
is this a thing? Um, and I think as people talk to each other, reputation is king, and eventually those groups die out, and we keep moving the table or keep moving the foot forward. Um, so I think I answered both those questions.
Well,
But it's
the one
there's one
question.
more thing.
Oh,
Sorry.
go ahead. Nope, go ahead.
Oh no. I think going off of what we talked about before this too. I listened to it on your podcast. Is you know I love Swift, but like that was a time when CCP, right, during your interview could have said, yes, this is bad. Like we need to work on this together, right? And I felt there was a little bit of passivity in the response, which is sort of disheartening, right? Like I don't want to see, like anti-Semitic stuff or whatever, right?
Yep.
And it's, I think CCP can do more, but until we're like more vocal about it and we sort of organize ourselves a little bit better and police ourselves better, I think, you know, it just takes time.
Yeah, I
It's
totally.
sad. That's how slow it is, but.
So then, what do you personally do when you see it, like in local or somebody on Discord is trying to put those casual racist memes and stuff like that?
We don't even have like a not safe for work channel and set it. Like there's just no opportunity to have any posts like that at all. Our whole focus is Eve as content, and like that's it. So like there's no like anything that could be abridged and like my alliance is just it does not happen. It's just no. This is not the place. I don't care like and if you can't hold yourself to it, then you're out. At the same time, when it is an Eve, right? Like you have to call it out. Like you have to say, hey, and it's uncomfortable because like you're playing a video game with a person across space, right? You're not actually like you're not their dad, but like
Right.
there's some things that just should not be said because then you're a reflection of the group that you're a part of. What type of group do you want to be
Yep.
reflected as?
Okay, so now on to a little bit less depressive topic. One of my favorite ones for these interviews is let's pretend that you actually make it onto the CSM. So, you make it onto the CSM, you get to your first meeting, and the plans for the next expansion, maybe even like the next year and a half, 2 years, is revealed to you. Not one thing that you campaign for, or one thing that you're an expert for, or that you want to work on is part of the expansion. What are you going to do?
I think a fantastic example, an exemplar of a person that had to deal with this was Mark. Mark, right, during faction warfare expansion, there's not his expertise, but he learned. He sat and he learned about the community. He integrated himself with it, learned about our problems, reached out and be the advocate that you have to be. And that's the same thing what I would have to do. Let's say they're focusing on wormholes. I'll have to learn.
Yep.
right? I would have to just learn the information and be able to be a good consumer and an advisor. Same thing. That's what I would do. I would try to get as much information, learn from my other CSM, not pretend that I have all the knowledge what should be done. No, I don't. I'm an expert in a few areas that I'm really, really good at, but I can develop some competence in other areas. That just takes time. And that's
Okay.
how I would approach it.
Then, as you know as well as I do, if you play the game long enough, things are going to get changed or taken completely out of the game. What we do as a CSM, if you find out an integral part of your community's gameplay is going to be changed, but it's overall better for the game. So I don't know. Maybe we decide that we don't want to send new bros to low sec to be slaughtered.
How
I know.
am I gonna? My
Send them
kill
all
board
to
will be
low sec.
inactive. Yeah. Uh, s- that's a great question. I think you have to. I need to think about this for a second. I think I would talk to CCP and to understand their reasoning. Like again, I'm an advisor, and I think that I can only advise and consult. And at the end of the day, they make the final call, which is I don't own the company unless I want to raise $1 billion and buy CCP Games. But like that's my role, right? And I think there's been times when there was gross negligence on CCP part where the CSM basically stood up and talked, and Brisk was a very good example of this multiple times. And if that comes to situation comes, then we talk about it. Otherwise, because I am under an NDA, I have to work with the tools that I'm given with my CSM team and try to advocate, why this would be a bad change. And there's been times where CSM has been able to advocate and revoke those changes that may eliminate a gameplay. I bet a lot of people on the CSM, or when I spoke to Darkshines about this, he was against the time zone tanking of the 3-day thing
Yep.
for Skyhooks. He said his piece, he let him know, and that's all you can do. And yes, that can be very depressing, but you have to understand your role.
Yep.
And I remember when Mike was talking about this stuff as well, like, and he warned me that when you see behind the curtain, your enthusiasm may go away a little bit. And it's just like, but I think that's a problem of how you're viewing your role.
Yeah.
It's their company, it's their game. I can only advocate on the players. It's their choice at the end of the day. And like, it's like I can show the path or I advocate for a path, but they have to walk that path, and that's it. Like that's all you can really do. I don't know if
Now,
that's like a way to navigate that depression of when that happens, but you know,
it's
I
tough. It's
it's tough.
tough. It's tough when it happens, but you figure out everyone's viewpoint. You figure out CCP's viewpoint.
Yep.
Maybe you can make it less worse. Sometimes you have to kind of throw your hands up in defeat. Eve rookies, we do have wormholes. We do wormhole ratting, and the change that happened on that. But it's like, can I really go and yell and scream that this one little itsy bitsy group that does, maybe 20 public ratting fleets a month, that we change it for or leave it just for that when you have this like huge problem going on? Yeah. It's what do you do?
Yeah, and it's like some people call it like watchful waiting or something, right? You're supposed to wait and see what happens.
Yeah.
Like, it's you can't. I remember when I need to think about this. I remember when we were discussing sometimes with CSN and CCP about faction warfare changes, and we sort of had to wait. They're saying we're going to iterate on this. We're going to iterate on this,
Yep.
and we have to wait and wait and wait. And everyone's just like, "Well, I want to leave Fact War now. I don't want to stay." I'm like, just like it's going to happen, but I can't tell you anything, right? And we just have to wait and see. Like they said, they're looking into it. Like that's all we can do.
Yep.
And it's a sense of powerlessness that I feel like you experience at times that can be very frustrating. I mean, I thought Stitch, for example, with the balanced Game Pass stuff that was happening, would be a lot more. But you got to win, and like you got to take the wins that you're able to get.
Yep. So then you are the expert or a expert in faction warfare. What happens or what would happen if a group that is totally outside of your gameplay, outside side of your style decides that you're the most approachable CSM and comes to ask you for something or ask for help, are you willing to help them out?
Of course. Like, I think that's what Mark did. Mark and I think Arzia was also there as well, and Stitch, yourself, a bunch of other people. Like, you were all open to hearing, and I think that's what we have to just learn. This game is massive, and even after almost a decade, I haven't played everything, and you can hear new ideas, hear new
Mm.
perspectives, and you may get solutions that you never thought of. And or you can, a solution for wormholes may actually work in low sec, and that's what actually should be integrated, right? And I think you have to constantly keep an open ear and eye to things, because the game has a 20+ year history now. There's a lot of learning.
Yep.
I mean, Kasnir sent me like a whole Bible of Eve history stuff, and I'm
Oh
like,
wow.
I gotta read. Like, I loved it. It was pretty cool. But he's an interesting character, and yeah, he like it's learning to do. It's awesome. It's the game is alive, right? And that's when I'm
It
saying Eve is dying. But it's like it is like an organism. That's
it
sort of
is.
interesting. Yeah.
So the last question in the section, I think that players, especially those that hang out on Reddit, have this perception that like the CSM are supposed to be some sort of god that goes in and puts CCP to task. So if players are demanding that you go fix issues or demand that CCP changes things, how are you going to balance the limitations placed on you as CSM, like the fact that you're an advisor, you have the NDA, with making sure that they actually feel heard?
You make them feel heard. You talk to them, right? Like, you talk to them, you say about the issues, and just say, like, this is what it is. Like, they know we've advocated for you, and that's what Brisk a couple times would say to me. He's like, Puke, we've talked about this, and like, they know, and we all are advocating for you guys as well, but it's on them. And like, that level of realization, I think, is a learning experience. Like, maybe the player doesn't know like what consulting is. Maybe they don't know like what our real role is, and that's a pace to educate them individually. Because I think Reddit is a bad platform because it's about mass, what can arise the most response,
No.
and that gets to the top, right? So like, if you're trying to be a calm, cool collective, which is why I really liked how Brisk and Mark and yourself and a couple others as well all made their replies, and you have that transparency as much as you can. Like, Angry is great. Every time he posts, his industry stuff, and then he talks about it, and he sees how people are thinking. There's transparency there. I think that's the way you should do it.
Okay, cool. Now some of the questions from my community. Multi-boxing is a huge issue. I think that in a lot of places it allows for botting, and I don't know how. Have you done home fronts yet?
I have not done home fronts, but I've heard the fun things of how they're being exploited.
Yeah, so we have botting fleets, but we also have fleets of multi-boxers. So a lot of times we'll take out players, but it takes about an hour, 40 minutes to an hour to actually find a site. So my community is split right down the middle on multi-boxing isn't bad unless you're botting, and then everyone should only have one account. Where do you stand on the issue? There's no right or wrong here. No one's going to crucify you.
So are
I
you
will.
just yes, Kento has joined us
Yes.
here. Good friend. Do I think multi-boxing, are you asking me like, should multi-boxing be eliminated outright, or
Just what's your stance on it?
I don't think multi-boxing is inherently the problem. I think that the tools in the game that allow multi-boxing to be to have unnecessary advantages is the problem, right? Like, it's the mechanics of the tools in the game that is allowing multi-boxing to be the issue. So like, for example, in a lot of these bigger fights that Kento, who's now in our chat, has also said, and he knows, and you know as well, like, usually when a fight, you got a subcap tune, a dread alt, fax, and Sino alt, it's 4 toons, right? Or 4 people on grid. And you
Sometimes
know,
more.
sometimes more, right? But when those settings though, you lose efficiency. You're not looking at your dread screen every time. You're not looking at your um, subcap tune every second. You're not looking at your fax alt every second. And so in that setting, it's fair because the more tunes that you add, the more complicated it is, and you're clicking all these random buttons, and you got to switch screens, and it's chaotic, right? However, in home fronts and PvE sites, you've seen the PvP videos. They alt tab, they click F1, alt tab, click F1, alt tab, click F1. Like that's a little bit broken. So I think it's that it's not the multi-boxing itself, it's the how the sites and the engagements are that allow it to happen.
Okay. And
Yeah, you can't nerf my abyssal.
Yeah. So like some people do abyssals, which is that a problem? I don't know. Like it helps people make guests and they're paying for the accounts. But like if people are running 5 boxing home fronts and then they're just botting with it, that's a problem. Or they're having 5 boxes drone assist, and that's a problem. But then you have to change the sites that allow that it's not an exploitation, but I think you know what I mean. Like an unfair advantage. That will then minimize minimize that advantage load. Because in big fights, it doesn't help. Like you get more resources, but you lose your efficiency. In those settings, you don't lose your efficiencies, actually it growth. So how do we change that? And
so
I don't have an answer for that. I would ask CCP what tools that they have.
So, just a fun little side question since you mentioned the magic words of drone assist. It seems like this set of candidates are dead set on getting rid of drone assist. What would you say to my community when you learn that we use drone bunnies heavily in incursions?
I don't think drone assist is the problem. I think that is the sites themselves that allow us to use drones to be used and exploited is the problem. Like make sites and rats that shoot drones first. Now drone assist is not possible.
Yep,
Like you see it.
kind of like
Yeah.
the Halloween sites. Yeah.
Exactly. The Halloween sites kill your drones. Like bring an Ishtar. You're not gonna kill anything after 30 seconds. Like that's how you think about it. Like I think people see the hammer and the nail. Oh, Pochvin. Oh, this. Oh, this. But I don't think CCP gets into this. They get it because it's time, but like they get into this habit sometimes of where if they want to do broad strokes, let's fix this. It impacts 6 different things. It doesn't, but then it has alter effects and like second order effects, third order effects. And it doesn't work. So what we have to do is really think what is the issues in each of these things. What's the common overlap? Can we make it a big change, or is it going to impact other things? That's very hard to do. So drone assist for that, there's times that people are doing it fine, but if for the difficulty portions of it, I don't think it's like I think there's easy solutions. Like for
Yeah.
example, in fights when people use drone assists, just bring a smart bomber. Like there you go, and your drones are dead. Now what? There's just tons of solutions, and the game needs to create more solutions to counteract those problems.
Yeah, and I think that that's also why the people that vote need to think about this when they pick their
Hmm.
candidates, because the broader that you can make the CSM, the more expertise and knowledge about what's going to affect what gets in there and into the conversation.
Yes. Yeah, I think people think again, hammer, nail.
Yep.
Drone assist bad. Drone assist bad. Okay, let's actually look underneath the hood. What are the intricacies of it? Where is it actually fine? What do other communities say? A lot of the issues, especially in Fact War, like when I was writing I guess my manifesto, um, which is I don't know, like you have to go in the granular little details, and then like I would talk with like Arzia or like Mark or others. This is like the tiny little details that we have to change, but it affects this and that because Eve it's a web, it's a network, and one change doesn't really last for one thing. It impacts multiple areas at once.
Okay, so second to last question. Probably, I don't know, maybe the easiest question, maybe the hardest. What do you think is the most pressing issue in all of Eve today?
Wow. Um, Most pressing in all of Eve. I would say hope. I think we had Uprising and we had Havoc, which was okay. An uprising like lifted the game from its being dead. And I think people need to see a vision from CCP and a direction where we're going. I don't think it is exactly a one mechanic or another, but we have to know where things are headed. And there's been a loss of sense of optimism over the past year. I felt like with Equinox that is the most pressing thing. Players are not logging in as much. Player counts are slowly going down again. We need to stop this reversal from what Uprising allowed us to do. And there needs to be a sense of forward thinking and hope again. That's like, yes, like this is actually better comeback. When Uprising hit, people like Bear the Cares, myself, other people were saying, come back, come back, come back, come back. There's tons of fighting, tons of content, fighting at your doorstep all the time. Look at all this fighting. No, with Equinox, it doesn't seem like that's happening. You have contests in Omist, I think it's called. But other than that, like I think hope needs to be reestablished, or like a way of forward thinking.
I like that.
I don't.
Totally agree that this last expansion has been special.
Yeah, I think that's a fair way to put it. Like I don't know. Like I just with Uprising and Havoc, there was a direction that we knew. Like it felt like it was planned, right? Like this, carrier changes, fantastic. Metanoxes, low sec money time, right? Like it's great, and people are fighting over things. But like, what's the bigger picture? Like,
Yeah.
where are we going? And I don't know where that is. And that if you're a player paying $20 a month, guys, like, what's going on?
Yep.
So
Okay, so we have come to the last question. What other candidates would you like to see elected alongside you?
yes, so I think there's three. One, it's my good friend Luke. Luke was actually my CEO in Into Oblivion a long time ago, and we've worked together a lot. And Luke is always a pleasure to work with. Two would be Seto. I think Seto and I exemplify, we're probably both the one of the most experienced players in their respective areas. I think especially in regards to scale, specifically like how Seto has done block level warfare, low level warfare, or mid scale, large scale content, and we fought each other now for I don't know for like 4 or 5 years at this point, with varying successes and degrees. At the same time, however, I give the flip side, the more smaller scale, the mid scale, like gives you an example of that ladder that I like to talk about of scale in Eve Online. Because right now you have blocks, right? You have these massive organizations, but you don't really have any smaller mid-scale organizations. And then a step above that is like a big AB. And it gets that level of progression and like what are the problems within the scale of Eve Online is super important to be heard. And I think we can get really great discussions about that as well. Um, the second that was third or second person, and then Switch. So Switch is another really really fantastic. Actually, there's four. Switch and Creatnos. Creatnos again, good friend. He's very knowledgeable in his areas, especially with lowsec. Switch as well, and he's an Angel Cartel guy. And these are like great people. If I'm not elected, I want to see one of those people elected, because their heart are in the right place.
Okay, great. So, do we have any questions from the audience for Youngpuke2?
Thank you. Or now Switch says Youngpuke the second. I think that's how it would be called. So that's funny. So
We'll see if
can't
anybody.
Well,
got any
I
questions,
mean, I
Kenta?
don't, not really. I mean, would you do anything to address like the state of pirate LP mostly being filled with LP farmers and like AWOXers and all that?
Yeah,
Would you do
so
anything about that?
yeah, there's like a lot of stuff that can be done. Like I think penalties for AWOXing should be no loyalty to be gained for a week. Now all the AWOXers are never going to vote for me. That sucks, but I don't want your vote, I guess. And like it just needs to be done, needs to be fixed. And then I think you need to better integration of pirate insurgencies into Navy factional warfare. That isn't just spin the system around and hope for a good fight. Basically, I really think it needs it needs a better purpose of like raiding, like the pirate role should be a raider's role, and that role is not fleshed out. So yes, like we would definitely advocate that. But again, it's, what Kushal said, right? It's, do they have the time? And I don't know. I can message them, be like, hey, can you do this? And be like, yeah, sure.
So,
I'll sign another petition.
so
Another one of
Neko
your petitions.
Neko has a question. In your opinion, what small change that would make life as many players or what is a small change that would make a life as many players as possible better?
If I in game or like Eve as totality, like I guess I'll give it two different answers then. One, I would cut the subscription price in half. I think $20 a month is very expensive for a lot of people, especially, we're making the assumption of income. A lot of players that I know personally just can't afford it. God forbid the hurricanes, right? Like if you got into a hurricane recently, your house got totaled, how are you going to pay X dollars a month for this game, right? Like it's very expensive. And there's a type of class that then only can really afford Eve. And I think that hurts new player retention if you say, is this worth $20 a month? That I think is a financial piece, which I have no control over whatsoever. That's CCP Games. But the other part would be, um, I think, I, I think it would really, I'm gonna get my angry mustache hat on and say industry changes that make ships cheaper, make things more affordable, increase the ISK velocity, make things so you don't have to spend 6 hours, to get a battleship or something. I think it's very important because groups right now in LoSec have Patreons in order to afford the PvP content that they want to do. You have people spending more money out of their pockets in order to play the game, and I think that's a problem. Like I don't think that's realistic. Big AB has one. A few other groups also has a bunch of them, or like Marquee Dragon buyback custom things. Like I just think the game is very costly, time intensive, and costly in the modern era. I think that would help a lot of people, both financially and with their own time. Make things cheaper.
Okay, I actually have a question for you that I'm going to piggyback off of Neko. Uh, as a CSM, you have a lot of you have space to make suggestions for like small quality of life things, and this could be anywhere from a, or ALC, yeah, on hangers, or I don't know, making stacked items into like 3 stacks or other little things like that. What kind of quality of life things would you suggest, or what's on your list?
Oh,
Like off
fantastic
the top of your
question.
head.
I would remove tags from LP stores entirely if that's a huge quality of life. Allow more people to access more aspects of the stores that are now locked behind mechanics that have been updated. I think that I think the LP store, like the new task system, I don't know if that's a quality of life thing, but I don't think it's very new bro friendly at all. I think it's like do these tasks, and I think the previous version that they had was easier. I don't know if that's small, but definitely that. And I think I would a quality of life change, this is more fat core focus. I would really like to see like some of the more role playing aspects. So like for example, like there's these generals basically that are in each faction, and during like the bigger Eve sponsored events, they put out messages of things that you should do. We should have some more of that. Like, oh, like the Galente Federation says you need to seize this system. Oh, let's seize it, right? Like, sure, it's a little bit cheesy, but it gives people a purpose to do. And that's a little quality of life to really integrate, like, why are we doing this? Like, what's the purpose of it in the gameplay loop? And it's not really there. I think those are like 2, 3 quality of life things that can make a little person happy. Like, oh, I'm doing this for my community. I'm doing this for my team versus like I'm spinning in a Plex for what reason? Um, those would be the 3 things. Good question.
And
Um,
one last thing from you. If there's new players that come across your interview, what suggestions would you give to them on getting into faction warfare? Because I know myself, I mean, I know I should enlist, but I have no idea what the next step I should take.
Great question. So each of the militias have their own Discord, and so when you immediately join, if you're a new player and you come across this, ask for the militia that you joined Discord, and then immediately each Discord I think now has like a new player section or like join this group section. That's where you get started. Start talking like, hello, I'm new. Can somebody orient me? I want to join the militia and join a corp. Joining a corporation is going to make you find a home.
Okay,
That's what I
fantastic.
would say.
So, any last things that you'd like to say before we go for the night?
No, I mean, I think this was a lovely interview. Thank you so much for your time. This was awesome and great to
Thank,
catch up.
thank you for coming out. Where can people find you if they have more questions?
Oh, sorry. My table's wobbling. Sorry, I'm put my feet on the thing. Very exciting. Let's see. Where you can find me? Yeah, you can find me on my Discord at Youngpuke2. You can also do my forum post. No, you're fine. My forum post for my CSM campaign. And yeah, it's just those would be the two places. I'm doing interviews across everywhere, and I have another one now, and it never ends. But it's fun, it's a game, running for like Eve class president, basically, in a way.
All right. Excellent. Then I will make sure to put your forum thread down in the description once this gets up on YouTube, and hopefully people will find you and ask more questions.
Awesome.
So,
Thank you.
again, thank you so much, and very good luck.
You too.